Welcome to White Pill Radio, the roughly every other episode version of Theology on Air, which is an outgrowth of Theology by the Pint, a monthly gathering in Houston where around craft beer we talk about theological, ethical, philosophical, moral, social issues, all with, a good spirit and a lot of fun, but maybe a little controversy mixed in too. So, thanks for joining us today. I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran. I am joined, as almost all the time, by Sarah Stone.
Hey.
Grand Poobah of Theology by the Pint, and Ken Cowan.
I'm an accountant.
He's on the board for Theology by the Pint and Volunteer Extraordinaire. You'll meet him at any live event you come to, which we do encourage you to do. We have some great ones coming up. Yep. We have one about aliens and/or demons, Christian nationalism, so touching a lot of hot button issues. So we want you to subscribe to the podcast if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube, our YouTube channel, if you're listening to this on the podcast. All of that helps us out. Go to theologybythepint.org to learn about future episodes, how you can give. Did you say at the event the other night, by the way, that if you give $50 a month, you come to every event for free?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, that
because it's $600 a year, and I think it's over $500 a year gets you like free entrance.
Seems like a good deal to me.
Cool. So, pop it up to $100 a month. You get to bring a friend.
Nice. Yeah. All right, so do check out Theology by the Pint. Hey, we don't run ads. We're not monetizing our our YouTube channel or anything like that. But we do need people to subscribe and become partners and all that kind of stuff. And we're a 501c3, so write it off or something.
Or if you go to a church that would want to host us.
Yes.
That's the thing I'm on the hunt for right now.
Oh, okay. More host churches. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. Yep. So let's just jump in. This was one that made headlines, I think, for pretty. Oh wait, you know what? I didn't say my tagline.
I like to say this is blessed talk, but not happy talk. We are a post-apologetic,
ultimately hopeful applied theology. Yes, that looks at current events with a Christian worldview. So yes, but definitely is blessed talk, not happy talk. That's for sure.
That's a good segue into the first.
So let's
article.
Get real. Okay. This made news for obvious reasons. I think obvious reasons. This is from nationalpost.com. Quebec man has 2 healthy fingers amputated to relieve, quote, body integrity dysmorphia.
Dysphoria.
I'm sorry. What did I say? Dysmorphia? That's not even a word.
It is a word.
Body dysmorphia is like what either powerlifters have or anorexic girls
have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But this person
it's very similar.
Dysphoria.
This guy thinks he ought to have fewer fingers.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Ever since he was a child, he'd had incessant, intrusive thoughts about his left hand's 4th and 5th fingers, the sensation that they weren't his, that they didn't belong to his body. At night, he'd wake up from nightmares that his fingers were burning or rotting. The young Quebec man was so desperate to get rid of his fingers, he contemplated building a small makeshift guillotine. He couldn't imagine himself living for the years to come with those fingers, according to a recently published case report. Instead, a surgeon at his local hospital agreed to an elective amputation in what is being called the first described case of digits amputation for body integrity dysphoria, or BID, a rare and complex condition characterized by an intense desire to amputate a perfectly healthy body part such as an arm or a leg. Well, we could go on. Yay or nay to cutting off fingers if you don't like them anymore?
Oh my gosh. The first thing I thought was this poor man can never play guitar. I mean, among other things.
Well, no, there was that super famous jazz guitarist, like that French gypsy guy.
He could play guitar, but it's going to be tough.
Okay, sorry.
Spoiler
60%.
alert. Spoiler alert for The Last of Us. It involves somebody losing their fingers and trying to play guitar. So I recommend playing or watching The Last of Us. It's good.
Okay.
The Last of Us.
I've heard it's good.
Oh, it's a zombie movie or show. It's very good.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the obvious connection is the current transgender craze, which is removing healthy body parts because one feels that they do not belong.
Yeah.
And so the meta question here, and we've talked about this at various live events, various podcasts, is kind of the connection between soul and body. Like, what are you? Is your soul gendered? If something is out of step with your mind, like, let me ask it this way. Did this person have a mental disorder, for lack of a better way to say it, or a physical disorder? Well, I mean, the surgeon said it was physical, right? I mean, they worked, but his solution was ultimately physical.
The solution was physical.
Well, there are other mental disorders with the physical, the body dysmorphia, body dysphoria, right? I mean, body dysmorphia is a mental disorder that has a physical solution, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it has a physical solution that is alongside a mental solution,
exactly. But that's what I'm saying.
which this wasn't.
Right. It's not just like, I don't know, prescribe them SSRIs.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we make them eat and give them feeding tubes or whatever
right.
the case may be. My thing, it's interesting when I saw this article come through that when I get into conversations with people that don't agree with me about gender affirming, quote, care for adults, like let's take the kids stuff off the table for now. I've asked the question sometimes to get into how much autonomy ought a person have over their body. And I'll say, well, if someone went to their doctor, a grown up, and said, I don't feel like I should have a leg. But there was that story a while back about the lady that thought she should be blind.
Right.
And she gouged her eyes out.
She's
on
gosh. Dr. Phil. And that clip went viral.
Anyway, but I've asked friends, like, if someone goes to the doctor and they are perfectly autonomous and willing to pay for this, and they want a leg removed, should the doctor do it? And of course, most people will say the person should be allowed to ask for that because we should have like freedom over our bodies. But that's a trickier question because doctors have taken an oath to do no harm. And is that doing harm? If this is what the person feels ought to be. And the fact that we're having that conversation at all and there's any gray area to it is like just so astonishing to me.
Well, it seems to reflect a widely enough recognized change in how we understand what a human being is.
Yeah.
So we used to assume that, and now it's up for grabs. Basically, a person gets to determine what kind of a being they are.
I think it has to do with who we belong to. Like if you think that you are in charge of yourself and you answer to yourself and you're your own God, if that's even a term you would use, then yeah, you could chop off whatever you want. But if you think you belong to someone else, which Christians ought to think that, then it changes things.
So where's your limiting principle?
Yeah.
Like where's the limiting principle bringing it?
Right, because we cut our hair and we
right
get Botox or I don't know.
Should people, I was literally about to say Botox and lip fillers.
Yeah.
Should people be allowed to do that?
I do not have either, so I feel like I can speak. No, it's true that I don't have either.
Sure.
But
because I am the anarchist, and I'm viewing this from do you use a gun to stop the doctor or the patient from doing this, right?
Right.
We all agree this is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
However, what is the solution? Is the solution, the individual solution? It's probably a lot of therapy.
Sure. Learning to play guitar. Okay.
The political, low-key, that actually would be a really
I
good,
thought about if this was my child and they were saying that, I'd be like,
piano,
let's take up
guitar.
something that needs the fingers.
Yeah, for sure. Learn to type.
Make beauty.
Like,
Learn to type. Sorry.
It's like learn to code.
Okay, keep going, Ken. Sorry.
But so there is the social question, which is what should their community be pressuring them to do? And then there's the political question, which is what should you or me be voting for a politician to send a gun to stop the doctor or the person from doing this?
Right.
That's the question.
But yeah, I guess isn't this just treating the symptom though? I mean, is that what medicine is? Is that what psychological medicine is? I mean, isn't there a root cause here that must be addressed?
Well, Ozempic treats the symptom.
Snap.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the drug to lose weight. That's
It's
meant for something else, but
what do you mean? Like because it makes you not be hungry?
Right. When the underlying condition is a caloric intake, right? You have a caloric excess. Right?
Yeah.
Ken hates fat people. You should know this.
I don't hate fat people.
I'm joking. He doesn't.
Michelle Obama hates fat people.
But meaning instead of treating what has gotten you to the place of being obese.
Doctors do that all the time.
Yeah.
There's the famous magician.
But you wouldn't actually compare Ozempic to cutting 2 fingers off.
I'm not.
So
I'm using that as an example to counteract the Right. Do we treat the symptom or do we treat the underlying cause? Right. We treat the symptom all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's what I'm comparing.
And to answer your question, Ken, do we vote to put laws in place politically? There's already a law in place politically for this. It's I mean the Hippocratic Oath that physicians in America take, not just America, but it starts with this.
That's a culture, not a law.
You could be a doctor without taking it?
Actually they've changed it. No, I mean, lots of medical schools have these bizarro social justice oaths they're taking now to but
it doesn't include do no harm.
No, there's not.
I don't think we have a definition of harm, right?
Exactly.
This is kind of my meta point is that we don't actually have an agreement about what harm would be because they would just say, oh well, it's more harmful. Well, right. In the aggregate, is it more harmful for him to have a nightmare about losing 2 fingers?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Now, if this guy can't there's a job he can't do, does he get to go on like the welfare dole? No, because he
get disability.
Yeah. What if there's a job? What if any job he needed required 10 fingers and he's only got 8? So in a sense, we're underwriting because all of us pay insurance premiums or taxes or however this was paid for. I think this is like Canada, so maybe doesn't matter to us. But you get the idea. It's like in a sense, like the citizens are underwriting this surgery. Does he have to sign something that says I will never request government benefits as a result of this or something?
Sarah.
And, and if that's the case, then maybe I'd be like, go ahead, cut them all off. I don't care.
Sarah, I don't hate fat people.
Oh, I know.
But people with people with diabetes lose their feet all the time, and it's the exact same problem.
Yeah.
Right. Should
should
people with diabetes be able to go on disability?
I don't think it's the same problem because they didn't willfully choose
to do what?
Yeah, well, to cut their fingers off.
The feet.
You're gonna say
Isn't that just a gradation thing?
That's what I'm saying.
They didn't eat well. I would say they're a victim of the United States food complex.
Oh,
well,
don't
is this
do
guy
that.
You agree?
No, I don't. I don't agree. No,
you don't.
No,
I don't know.
Supersize Me was garbage. No.
Okay, well,
calories in, calories out. That's it.
I'm gonna walk.
No, I don't know about that, but I don't know enough about diabetes to say. I will say that like half of America is either diabetic or pre-diabetic. That wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. I think something has changed. I don't think it's how much we eat. I do think it's what we're eating and how our bodies are unable to process the foods that we're eating.
Or some combination there.
So I don't know enough about diabetes. I mean, are you saying that like people have diabetes because they eat too much sugar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
They eat too much carbs and sugar.
Well, that I agree.
Carbs and sugar come in like
I'm getting so hungry.
GMO or non-GMO.
Yeah.
You could eat oranges all day long and get diabetes, right?
Yeah.
Like, non-GMO organic oranges and you'll get diabetes. Right. Diabetes it comes from carbs and sugar.
But there are some, and the last word on this, but there are some mitigating like factors to that. Like for example, if you try to get insurance and you do blood work or you do a health test, like it's way more expensive if you're not healthy. Yep. So there are like some market kind of factors to that.
The Christian health, what are they called?
I know what you're talking about.
Health share.
Yeah.
Medishare.
That's actually why I didn't join up with that one.
A lot of them say, don't, like, if we give you a premium, if you don't drink, don't smoke. Dude, I should probably sign up for one of those tomorrow.
You totally should, because you're our resident teetotaler.
Well, anyway, don't chop your fingers off. That's what I would say. Okay.
Talk to your community.
Speaking of, let's see, slippery slopes, changing societal norms.
What you do with your body.
What is a polycule?
I'm so glad you asked.
Is that what? Did I say that right?
Sure.
Yes, you did.
It's a made-up word between like polyamory. Well, okay, that's fine. It's a recent made-up word, but it's not a recent phenomenon. So this is from an article from the New York Times. Says the word polycule is a synthesis of polyamory, engaging in multiple romantic relationships, and molecule, so just a collection of something. It's not clear when the word was coined, but it seems to have started catching on around 15 years ago to suggest an intricate structure formed of people with overlapping deep attachments, romantic, sexual, sensual, platonic. It's difficult to describe a polycule. It's not for me. I think it's basically a commune. But anyway, or an orgy. Words like family and network are used, but neither on its own captures it. Perhaps it's best to let a polycule itself offer descriptions. So this article basically interviews some people from a polycule in Massachusetts, Boston, that, by the way, has been going on for 4 years. So this is not just some like fad and in, a few weeks it's going to be over. I'll just give you like one of the little snippets. I mean, they're all talking about it's not just an orgy, because sometimes it's not sexual. Sometimes it's like cuddling. Sometimes it's just basically being friends. Like, we're all going to go have dinner after this.
She described it as a weird family that's sometimes kinky.
Well,
in the article.
That's one thing that one person said.
Yeah.
So their polycule is pretty big. It's like 20 plus people. And there's different iterations, but like almost all of them identify as some kind of queer. So there's several non-binaries. I think all of the like female at birth women in the group either identify as queer, non-binary, or trans. Anyway, so, but I wanted to read, let me see, a couple of little sections here. Oh yeah, so there are self-identified males who identify as heteroflexible. Being flexible is good if you're going to be in an orgy. Can I say that on
Actually, it's one
air?
of my points the other night, which is that when you try to use the argument about orientation, like I am gay, like I am a gay person, so that therefore it's okay for me to perform those acts. I'm like, dude, do you know how many straight men, do gay acts? So Anyway.
I appreciate
no.
that, but my joke was
quite
lost.
common.
Then they're not
I'm sorry.
straight.
Oh, there was a joke?
I said hetero-flexible. That's good
Oh.
to be flexible if you're going to be in an orgy.
Well, that's what I was going to say earlier. You said
Oh,
like,
thank
you know,
you.
all of them are
Sorry.
queer, and I'm like,
I messed it up.
yeah, duh. Like,
No, I know.
If you're in a like, if
Yes.
you're in a
Yes.
hippie commune,
Any
wherever
variation
like,
outside of two,
Yeah.
by definition.
by definition, you're going to be
were
bi.
You,
Like,
were you talking about like playing the game Twister? That's
Basically.
Okay.
Oh,
Gotcha.
no.
Okay. All right.
It's Naked Twister. Here we
Okay.
go. Hey, guys. Sarah Stone here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is a riveting podcast episode, but Theology by the Pint needs your help to continue providing these podcasts, offering our in-person events, and growing so we can bring thoughtful conversation and the hope of the gospel to a world that's increasingly walking away from church and from faith. Now that we're a 501c3 nonprofit, all donations are tax deductible, so we've crunched the numbers, and if each listener of this episode gave just $1 for each episode you listen to, we'd put a huge dent in our annual budget. So consider giving today. Go to theologybythepint.org/give and click the link to donate. Thanks so much, and now back to our show. Every femme-presenting person or woman identifies as queer. A lot of people are married and have primary partnerships. They're coming to it from the opening of a monogamous relationship. So they started monogamously. So this is part of this broader ethical non-monogamy and I happen to know that this is very trendy right now, not just because I have friends that are in this world, but being in the online dating scene, which up until 6 months ago I was, a lot of people on my sites, Bumble and Hinge and these like very like just regular, apps are saying that they're ethically non-monogamous, ENM, or polyamorous. And if you walk into Barnes & Noble right now, there is a whole section that at the top of it will be the ethical slut, which was written several years ago. Basically,
seem like contradictions in terms.
Right, I know. Yeah. Well, the whole thing is, and it's funny because I think part of the reason this caught my eye is because I'm in the last few minutes of the read right now. One of our other members that comes on here sometimes to speak, Austin Freeman, got me into reading the book Strange Rites. And it's basically about all of these, quote, religions that people would not call a religion that are essentially offering them what church offers Christians. But let me go on because you'll see if you just listen carefully, one of the guys that they're using fake names and stuff, but there's a guy, Robert, who's Anne's husband, he says, we have this motto, feelings are not facts. That's true. That gets us through the hard times. At the start, I was going through some depression, and when we had sex, I had so much stress. There were issues in the bedroom with her, and that happened many times. And basically, his wife found this guy who Robert calls a total stud, and then it made him feel really jealous. And then he says, but medication helped me. Talk therapy helped me. Changing the way we do things helped. That's where feelings are not facts really mattered, because I would ask her questions and she would be like, no, I don't feel that way. And I would be like, this is, by the way, in the New York Times written like this. I know you like being with him more than me. And she would say, I'm not lying to you. It's different, but it doesn't make me love you less. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I could go on and on. What I think is interesting about this, somebody that's in our group chat said something like, oh, this is a trend that'll like be dead before too long. It will not. This has gone back. Do you know how many verses there are in the Bible that talk about orgies? Like, this is why. This is what this is. I mean, it's not just an orgy. It's not just an eyes wide shut situation, but it is going against what I think God has set up as a good institution. And all of the things that the people in here are looking for, God has already set up institutions to give that to you. Like to be completely accepted and to be one with another person. Well, we have an institution for that. To be part of a community where people are loved, and they talk in here about how they care about each other. And when, someone's struggling, they all rally around them. Well, we have an institution for that. Right. But there's this like utter rebellion that says, well, we can't enjoy the institution of marriage because that puts too many restrictions on us sexually. And we can't enjoy the institution of religion / the church because that puts, too many parameters on us. So we're going to make this own thing. But then laughably, they're just making their own church, Yeah. So anyway,
with none of the ethics.
Yeah. And it will end up eating itself. I mean,
I'd love to see it's like the cult shows, right? Like at some point someone comes out of it and is like, let me tell you what it's really like.
Yeah.
Like I know that you know, the like, you ever see the documentary Wild Wild
Wild
Country?
Wild. I was gonna say Wild Wild
Yes.
Country.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah,
Now
so-
it's a Young Life camp.
It's like
by the way.
Oregon or something, right?
Yeah. With the Rajneesh, what's his name? Anyway, but it was just a sex cult. I mean, that's all.
There's
mean,
been sex cults forever.
yes, it's nothing new, and you know, people want to undo the Garden of Eden. I mean, that's all it is. People want to transgress boundaries. That people want, you know, estrange, as they call it, as the young people call it, right? So it's not unusual. It's not, you know, I mean, pornography for a lot of people fills that role, but I think people are like, oh, forget that. I want the real thing. You know, there's really no Christian kind of worldview that's so saturated anymore that's preventing it. But I do think it'll end very poorly. That's the white pill. And even for like, I do think there's a lot of like normal couples that are like, hey, maybe we add a third person. I don't think that's probably that abnormal, you know, or people that just date.
In Houston
date around.
suburbs, we have a huge swinging community.
Yeah.
How do you know?
I interviewed for a job where they were like, you should know this is a thing in this suburb. But I will just read this one other little section, then I can be done with this. This is later in the article. It's talking about a woman who she's part of the situation where her husband, she was at home chatting with one of her lovers on the bathroom floor, and she got a text from her husband. It says, so we sat on the bathroom floor chatting about our relationship all night. And while that was happening, my husband was texting to say, oh, I got a last minute match. By the way, there are apps that are just for ethically non-monogamous people. So if you're listening, use your own apps and get off mine. I mean, I'm not on it anymore, but someone else is and is annoyed by that. Okay. So she got a text from her husband texting to say, oh, I got a last minute match. So I'm going to meet this girl for a date. And then I get a text while we're still on the bathroom floor vibing. Sorry. It was 4 a.m. and he said, we had a great day, a great connection. She's looking for friends with benefits. We had sex. And I was smiling. You know, you're really polyamorous when you're with one of your partners talking about how much you love each other and you're so happy your husband had this awesome night. Of course I experienced pangs of jealousy, but there are some of these moments, these gems of being so happy, blah, blah. And I thought as I read that section, what this person is doing, and I can only say this because I've done the same thing, not in this particular way, where you feel a tinge of something that is an appropriate response, right? Like maybe it's guilt or something doesn't feel right about this because something isn't right. And you push it down for the sake of this other thing that you have put up as a God in your life. And if you do that enough, yeah, it quote works because you've shoved that down enough that then it doesn't feel as raw the next time and the next time and the next time. It doesn't make it right or good. Anyway.
Can I flip it?
Please.
To the
and reverse it.
And
sorry, I had to Missy Elliott.
That's a really old song.
That is so good.
Never heard it.
She does this whole like backwards talking thing,
Yes.
but it's not satanic, I promise. So like you all are friends with Pentecostals, right? They grew up with the jean skirts and like the hyper conservative. Like I do think, obviously, this is the far, far, far extreme of don't even let your jealous feelings bother you. But there's the other extreme, which we in the Christian community have to, contest with, which is like getting jealous that your, wife or girlfriend or actually the Pentecostals don't have girlfriends.
Courtship partner.
The person they're courting, even like said hi to another man.
Right.
There's a ton of that in the purity culture and the church.
Yeah.
I do think there is a spectrum in which, this is the far, far, far jealousy doesn't matter. But there's also like, jealousy is a problem a lot of the time.
Oh, and I think you're actually just making my point for me, which is that the jealousy I'm talking about that's happening here is it's good and right.
Sure.
And when those people are feeling it, they've stretched something that is still good and right. They're just, like you said, the pendulum has swung the other way, I guess. But jealousy isn't the problem, right? Like the Lord is jealous of us. If your wife were acting inappropriately, you'd be jealous, rightly so. So I guess the question is it a right?
Does the jealousy pendulum belong in the middle, right? Because if it pulls all the way back and you're too jealous,
sure,
then, that's really like...
And not being jealous at all is a problem too.
Right.
Yeah.
You have, women in burqas, right? If the jealousy spectrum is all the way to the back in religious communities, you have women in like blue jean skirts that aren't allowed to talk to men. And then when the jealousy is all the way on the other side of the spectrum where it doesn't matter at all, then you get this, right?
Right.
I think, everything in balance. I think the pendulum probably needs to be in the middle where you're not freaked out that your spouse has a friend of the opposite gender, but you're also not like really excited about that like this person. It's
sure.
like, they're both kind of
Yeah. Well, just
Yeah.
like any sense that you have, any emotion or feeling or something that sort of cropped up in you that's, not a tangible thing, you have to take it and you have to compare it against some kind of standard.
Sure.
Right. Which gets back to the man cutting off his fingers. Like, who did he belong to? And in this case, who do I belong to? And who does if I had a husband, belong to? And what are sort of the rules that have been set up such that I can read that jealousy and say, well, this is good jealousy or bad jealousy. Anyway.
Cool.
I just can't imagine these men who are.
No, right.
I mean, come on, dude. Like oh man, like it's like, is that what modern therapy is? Like it does to men? Like there's a line in there like, well, I talked to my therapist about it.
And he's on medication.
I'm like,
if you have to do that much work to be okay with something.
My guess is that the men will, they're sacrificing the humiliation in order to be polygamous, basically. That's probably the trade they're making. It's like, yeah, this is basically ritually humiliating for a man, maybe for a woman too. I don't know.
I think though there is a I just closed it down, but the article did talk about like this is all run by women. The women make the rules, and then like 2 sentences later, and it's like we love not having rules. Oh, okay, yeah. But anyway, I think at least this is totally anecdotal, and I could be wrong about this, but the stories that I've heard a lot of times are women that were in a monogamous relationship and they wanted to step outside of that and explore polyamory, and their husbands didn't want to at first, but because they love their wives and they wanted to keep that relationship, they explored it. And then, so it's not just husbands that are cheating. They're like, get on board, it's like, it's almost the reverse.
As far as cheating, and you mentioned humiliation, like unpack that. What do you mean by humiliation? Because I'm thinking of an example, Hosea, who certainly wasn't happy about his wife, getting stooped by every single, guy that she could find. But then like is that a humiliating story?
Yeah.
It is.
So.
It is to say, but like then that would say we humiliate God because that's the actual.
Well, yeah.
Or he is.
I
mean,
think Israel
he
condescends to come to us.
Let's talk about the word humiliation and like
made humble, made low.
Right.
Wasn't Jesus made low? Didn't he choose to? I mean,
get cucked by the Israel people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Speaking of Israel.
Oh no.
Okay.
All right.
That was a wonderful segue.
Man, yeah. There's a war going on, and
it
seems to be expanding every day.
And the Christian community is having so much fun, specifically the evangelical Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Pastor John Hagee, this is about 2 days ago, says, Iran's missiles are the prophetic start of Gog and Magog war from the Bible that ends with Jesus returning and the Jews either being killed or converted. Hagee says he will travel to D.C. to lobby lawmakers not to de-escalate and to support Israel.
Wow.
Also give him money.
That's Ken's addition, but not wrong.
So he's he's got a big church in San Antonio, and he's like Israel flags fly in the background, and he's big into the
dispensationalist like chart, and it's like, here's the rapture, here's the
watching for those blood moons, baby.
Yeah, every blood moon he has a.
Yeah, I know he wrote a book about the blood moons, and
he was real big when I was growing up. I grew up Southern Baptist, and we.
How old is this guy? Because I've known that name.
He's got to be about 80.
He's about 80, but I grew up on the.
He probably just wants the world to end so he can be around for it because he's not going to be around much longer.
What's frustrating is when I listen to, say, conservative-ish, but not necessarily like Christian influencers, podcasters, all that kind of stuff, and these kind of people come up, or people kind of casually mention, like the eclipse, like, people talking about that. It's very frustrating. We don't know the day or the hour. I mean, I'm firmly in the the amillennial camp. We are living through the 1,000-year reign of Christ now.
But quick pause, because there are plenty. I just feel like our audience. There are plenty of premillennialists and or dispensationalists who don't believe all this crazy nonsense.
I have lots of friends that
I
are
have lots of
dispensational
friends.
I love them all.
Yeah, and for a thorough rundown of all that, we just put out a podcast where the Eschaton Salon. So you'll go back and listen to that. But I just, it's unfortunate. I'm tending to view this now as a ugly regional skirmish. So Israel a couple of weeks ago killed someone in Iran. And then Iran sent some missiles, toward Israel, and it seemed like a half-hearted attempt. I think a lot of people are even saying like it didn't really do any damage. It was like a face-saving measure. Like Iran had to convince their people,
right? So they
that
can go
they're
back to
still
their
in
people.
charge,
Yeah.
and like, hey, we're fighting back. We did all we can,
Mhm.
and now Israel's attacking yesterday or today, or
Literally
last
this
night.
morning.
Yeah. So it I don't. For me, the question is: are the united forces against Israel, the kind of Muslim world, are they going to actually try to do what they say they want to do, which is wipe Israel off the face of the earth?
Well, not Saudi Arabia. That's the
Yeah.
interesting part. The
Yeah.
Muslim
Yeah,
world isn't
Yeah.
one thing, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
well, that's what Trump, the Trump Accord,
The
or whatever.
Jordanian monarchy,
Abraham
like,
Accord.
Yeah, they're fighting back. They're some of the ones shooting down the Iranian missiles.
It's really interesting to see that the Muslim world isn't one thing, right?
No.
Which is really frustrating when you talk to Christians that just know, like, oh, that over there is all the Muslims, right? And
right.
it's really, really, really
No, well,
complicated.
Iraq and Iran, they warred for years, and we, that's why Saddam Hussein was our friend. Because we didn't like the Khomeini, so we empowered the Saddam Husseins of the world in Iraq, and then later we didn't like them, and it seems like that never works out well.
Why don't we like Khomeini? Didn't we overthrow the Shah?
Funny. Isn't that funny? Yes.
So
let's see.
So
we overthrew
Iran
that
could have a
government, then we
revolution.
overthrew that government, then we overthrew that government,
Yeah.
and Osama bin Laden is somewhere there. Anyway, but yeah, it's I'm trying to figure out if this is the start of a truly cataclysmic Middle Eastern war where Israel's gonna. I mean, the thing is, Israel though can pretty much defend itself, and it does have a few allies. Whether or not we need to particularly be involved, I think for the most part they don't necessarily want us to be that involved. I mean, they probably want our money, but
They do want our money.
Even then, we are literally borrowing money from China to give to Israel. I mean, none of it makes any sense. So.
No, but just to push back a little bit on
Yeah.
that, is this just a little skirmish where it's like we killed their top guy and then they had to have a show of power and then we had to, and I say we as if I'm Israel, which of course I'm not, but I am on that side. But it's not like it started with them a few weeks ago killing the Iranian leader. I say started, I mean, it started back in the Bible, but I mean, this particular iteration of what we're looking for started on October 7th when Hamas attacked Israel, and Hamas is an arm of the Iranian government. I mean, they're a proxy group. No? Are they not funded by Iran?
They're funded by us too.
But by way of Iran?
What are you talking about?
That was for humanitarian reasons.
I mean,
which I'm sure they earmarked. You're an accountant. They earmarked.
There's
it very
so many
carefully.
scare quotes in here that you.
I think you're talking about the accounting principle of fungibility, which is if you have it in a bucket.
Well, I was being sarcastic.
Well, I mean, no. It's actually for real because Hamas isn't one thing.
Right.
Hamas is the people that build the hospitals that get bombed. They are the people that build the infrastructure. They're also the people that dig up that infrastructure and turn it into rockets, right?
Yeah.
That dig up the water pipes that are laid by Hamas. Hamas will be the ones laying the water pipes. And then Hamas will be the ones digging up those water pipes and then turning them into rockets.
Or not
right?
even building them at all and turning them into rockets to begin with.
To act like it's one big organized, pyramid with one person on top telling his lackeys to tell their lackeys to do the thing is not at all how it works over there.
But there are leaders within Hamas.
Disorganized. There are.
Okay. I mean, it may be a mess.
Yeah, that are going to be extremely at odds with the other leaders of Hamas that run the humanitarian stuff that you're talking about, right?
No, wait. Are you saying that there are people that are part of Hamas that are just do-gooders?
Literally, the doctors that run these hospitals are employed by Hamas.
Okay, employed by Hamas. I guess
they are part of Hamas. That's the problem.
I know it embeds itself in a culture, right? I mean, they talk about honeycombing. They're using the hospital and then underground underneath the hospital are the terror tunnels.
Right.
So just because someone's employed by Hamas doesn't mean that Hamas actually has some good parts of it.
Thank you. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the actual people that are not engaged in war don't have anything to do with the war.
Okay,
right?
but I'm asking about, is Hamas funded by Iran?
Some of those people get a paycheck by Hamas and are labeled by the IDF as members of Hamas.
No,
and that's what makes it very, very, very complicated when you look at how many of these are military combatants, which the IDF just counts how many people are on the Hamas payroll.
Okay, fine. Let's say that all of that's true. The X number of the 400, I'm making that number up. Hamas people that went into Israel, took their women, raped their women, all of that, right? Those dudes.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, they were all men.
Yes, they were.
Where did they get their funding?
A lot of different places. Some of it came from Oman, some of it came from, the aid that we send to Gaza, but tons of countries.
The aid we sent to Gaza when?
What do you mean?
Well,
we've been sending Gaza is one of the most like one of the highest recipients of humanitarian aid in the world, right? People make the comparison to Singapore that like they kind of have the, the income, like when you look at GDP and you look at the income part of GDP, they have the income of like Singapore. And they could build that if they didn't dig up all their infrastructure and turn it into
run by
rockets.
terrorists.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. So some money that we gave for humanitarian efforts that was turned into money for evil and money from Iran. Okay. So my only point in this is that it's not like Iran just popped onto the world stage a couple of weeks ago. They've been funding this crap for months now. I mean, more than months, but currently what we're looking at and the whole Houthi mess in the Red Sea, like that's an Iranian funded group. Hezbollah is an Iranian funded group. So it's not just like, it's like Iran's like, out of nowhere, you killed our guy. Well, we're going to show you like I mean, I've come to be known as the burn it down girl. And if they had burned it down from the beginning, I mean, some of this we wouldn't even be talking about.
Define it.
If Israel had, now I am not suggesting that that actually is the way that people ought to do war, but if they had just completely carpet bombed the Gaza Strip and Hamas were gone, do you think that everything else would have happened? Again, I'm not saying that's what people should do. I don't want innocent civilians to die either.
Yeah, can I escalate that to 2 entire cities called Nagasaki?
I prefer you not to escalate.
And
no,
Hiroshima, right?
Sure. Because
the World War II, the Pacific Theater specifically, would have gone on way, way, way longer had we not killed the innocent civilians in Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yeah.
And that is kind of what you're saying. It's like, yes, the war would go on longer, like, if you don't kill civilians.
Well, and no matter what you do, you're killing civilians. Sadly, that's what war does.
Well,
I mean, it's one thing it does.
There's different ways to mitigate civilian casualties.
Of course.
You can't get them to zero, but like
talk about mitigation. I mean, Israel, more than any other military power ever, is like giving people all this warning, helping them, bringing humanitarian aid in. Like, and then the West keeps saying, do more of that, do more of that.
Yeah. And actually, it's a fairly low number of civilians. It's lower than ours.
Evan?
Well, like Iraq.
In Fallujah. Yeah. It's like much
Yeah.
lower than the civilian to militant count in Fallujah. I'm not arguing. I'm not pro George Bush.
Yeah.
I'm not a Dick Cheney guy. Like,
well, I don't know. But yeah, I agree. I think Iran is. I mean, everyone knows Iran is.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're good.
That's why we sanctioned them. That's why we froze their money, and that's why we ended up giving them the pallets of cash because we couldn't.
Hold on, that wasn't we. That wasn't we. We unfroze it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it belonged to them.
Right.
But,
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's what I said.
You say we gave it to them. We gave them pallets of cash.
We gave them their own money. Okay. Now we've frozen Russia's money, and we're threatening to give that to Ukraine to go to war with Russia, which would be a very, very bad idea. Yeah. I don't know. Part of my concern is that there is a great power that the state wields in war. One is having a common, and it's all very 1984. Having a common enemy. We've always been.
Oceania has always been. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And the money laundering should be pretty obvious. I mean, most of the money that we like earmarked for the war in Ukraine just goes to our own war manufacturing or what have you.
Yep.
But also, so it creates a kind of a common enemy for the people, but it also kind of gives us a cause. It's like, so I just got done reading a book. It's a kind of hard book to find, but it's written by Elliot Roosevelt in 1946. He was FDR's son, and he accompanied his father on many of and was in the room, like with Churchill and Stalin, like a lot of these actually during the World War II conferences, as the big three kind of figured out, how are we going to win the war? What's our strategy? What does post-war look like? And his argument is essentially that Churchill wanted to use America to win the war so the British Empire could continue. He did not have a high view of Churchill at all. But also that FDR's plan at the end of the war was for peace. And interestingly, there are a lot of people in the State Department FDR didn't trust. And his argument is that as soon as my dad died, we basically went looking for another war almost instantly. There were people in the State Department and top brass in the military. I don't think Eisenhower's one. Eisenhower's actually portrayed as a pretty great guy, but no surprise. But basically, as soon as the World War II is over, it's like, let's go hit Russia now. They're weak.
Yep.
They're weak because they just killed 20 million of their own people.
They were the Eastern Front. They were the ones that were actually sending men into battle with like rakes and hoes instead of guns because they just had numbers of bodies.
No disrespect to my two grandfathers who fought either very valiantly in Europe or trained people here. But if not for Russia, we would have lost. I mean, there was absolutely no chance. I mean, they won the war. JFK, recognized that at his famous American University speech, June 11th, 1963. And this was like a no-no. Like for JFK to say that was a big no-no, you can't say that. But so almost after World War II, it was like we got to find another war. And this is the mindset that I'm wondering, is that going on right now in the Middle East, where where it's like, I'm not saying it's not a legit war. Like, I think Gaza is forever never going to change. I think the Palestinians, that's never going back. But I wonder if it's useful to governments to always have a reason for war and to never like finish the job. And, because it's like beneficial. And there's something so dark about that. And there's something, and I guess what I would say, let's like bring it home. Like, where's the reality?
Yeah.
I would love to see Christians vote for people, primary people, because let's face it, politicians make these sorts of decisions. Like, this isn't a grassroots thing. Like, someone has to vote on this sort of thing. And just today, I think we voted for like more billions to Ukraine and more billions here and more billions there. Like, does either party have any notion of stopping this mentality? Like, is any government actually interested in its people living in peace? And I'm increasingly getting to the point where I'm not seeing any evidence of that at all. We're supposed to be panicked about the climate. We're supposed to be panicked about a disease. We're panicked about war. We're panicked about the oceans rising. What is it? Like does our government actually want us to be at peace? Because it seems like all they ever want us to be panicked about this and panicked about that and constantly in a total state of fear. And I think as Christians, we have to do some serious work to like figure out where our hope is and figure out if we can live in that place and actually have peace in a world where it seems like people want us to just be at each other's throat all the time.
So here's the neocon argument when they say, well, we're not actually sending troops to Israel. We're not actually sending troops to Ukraine, right? The neocon argument goes like, well, we have a bunch of these like, generation old fighter jets, right? And gosh darn it, Lockheed Martin and Boeing sure, could build us some nicer, shinier, fancier ones. How about, instead of sending men to Ukraine, how about we just send a bunch of old, these F-16s are so old, we don't even need them. We're going to build new ones anyways, right? Which is like a complex where like you have the industry and the military. It's almost like a military industrial complex.
Oh my gosh.
It's almost like that. Speaking of Eisenhower.
Like an Ouroboros eating its own tail, right? Yeah.
Watch the Eisenhower military industrial complex speech. I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's 15 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. Everyone should watch it. But just the, I tell you, it's just amazing how you watch old things and it's like, this is a different country. This is a different world. The respect shown to the audience, the vocabulary spoken, the gentlemanliness. I mean, and now it's a joke. Everything is just it's just a tragic joke.
It's crazy. Bush, like before 9/11, ran on an anti-war campaign, right? Because of the stuff going on in the Middle East with Clinton. Obama ran on an anti-war campaign. Promised to close Gitmo, never did.
The Speaker of the House.
Everyone thought Trump was anti-war, but like people thought he was, and they voted for him because they thought like he was anti-war. They voted for him.
Wasn't a ton of war during his administration.
There was a ton of war. He didn't start any new wars.
Well, you're using quotes, but we're sitting here talking about wanting to get into wars
by accident. He didn't start any new wars. I think the killing General Soleimani, almost got us into a war with Iran. And I was really upset with Trump about that.
You were?
Yeah.
Huh.
We don't need to start war with Iran.
Well, we didn't.
I know, but we could have.
Oh my gosh.
We killed one of their
What does it take to get on your good side?
Well, I'm saying we didn't by accident, right? We could have. Killing Soleimani.
I don't know, man. Trump's tweets where it's like all caps, do not mess with the United States. You have no, I mean, I don't know.
It was a deterrent, yeah.
It's like crazy, but it kind of worked, And so, but it's not Eisenhower like in a professorial tone, in a not slick way at all. Just like almost stuttering from time to time. I'm going, this was a really good guy. Now, not perfect.
A lovable man. Yeah.
Arguably, some kind of war crime territory there among all of our generals. But I don't know. Yeah, I that's something that I'm genuinely like struggling with as a Christian. And that's why we have a show called White Pill, because it's like we got to find the white pill. But it's like
for Evan's sake.
Yeah, really, for real.
So he doesn't spin out.
Yeah, but
well,
I
my
really
white pill is that John Hagee's of the world are becoming less and less popular.
Yeah,
like that's really my white pill. The evangelical movement is kind of turning anti-war, but then this Israel thing started.
I think there's probably just fewer evangelicals, though.
Oh,
I hate to tell you.
Oh,
you might be right.
We turned a white pill black real fast.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, I had this article from the Christian Post, kind of speaking of, there's a kind of massive abortion brouhaha. I mean, honestly, we could probably put together several articles and do this for like a whole show. Some interesting things have happened. With the Supreme Court Dobbs ruling, it seemed like as long as Roe was there was like a movement like against it. Like there was like common enemy. Now that it's gone, it seems like the numbers are going the opposite direction. There are more people pro-abortion now than ever. Whereas before it had gotten to where like more Americans were pro-life than pro-choice, and now something like 72% was the number I last saw of Americans essentially support abortion, which is very sad to me. I mean, it leaves one feeling not quite hopeless, but it's such a primary issue. So there's a lot that could be said about it, but we did have Trump came out with his statement where he basically said, "Hey, don't blame me. I gave it back to the states. The states have to fight it," which kind of didn't we have a war about that? Like states' rights issue of immoral things. Well, that's the corollary.
We kept it civil.
That's the corollary. And then the next day is, I guess, a coincidence, the Arizona Supreme Court, it's kind of a technicality, but they basically said 1870 something ruling that all abortion is wrong. That's the law, not the 15-week law. And then people like Carrie Lake, who I thought was pro-life, and Charlie Kirk, who says he's pro-life, and of course Trump, oh no, they went too far. We can't do that. It's a political loser. We've got to come up with some like something we can all agree on, some like 15-week or heartbeat or something like that. Well, the pro-life movement usually comes down, on some kind of compromise like 15-week or 20-week bill, which is 90-something% of abortions take place before that. Right. So basically, where I'm really cynical right now, I mean, like almost depressed, is the pro-life community and Planned Parenthood for 90% of abortions are on the same page.
That's insane.
They are on the same page.
But let me ask you something about the Arizona ruling. The people that are shocking you because they're anti that decision, are they actually anti that decision for a moral reason, or because they think it's a bad political move this close to the election, because they think it's going to, because that's a purple state and it's going to bring out the Democrats or the Republicans?
The Republican Party is terrified that basically at this point, the conservative movement on the issue set is right. Immigration, inflation, a lot of people are anti-war actually, even though their representatives aren't.
Inflation? Republicans do inflation all the time.
No. But the people
don't like it.
The people don't like it, and they're going to blame the guy in power.
Standing athwart history, yelling, "Stop!"
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
but not actually doing anything.
No. Yes, of course, I totally agree with you. Like gold standard, figure it out. Something.
Yeah.
But if the Arizona ruling had happened, let's just say that Trump wins in November, and then in February of 2025, Arizona had done the same thing. I don't think nearly what's happening now would be happening, because it's like, we're not worried that's going to affect an election.
Then I'm even more depressed.
Oh, I was trying to help.
I appreciate that. No, I think they are terrified of the 35-year-old single woman coming out to vote because they're overwhelmingly liberal, and if maybe they don't think like Biden has a chance to win, they'll stay home or something. But on this issue, it will mobilize turnout in a way that is like freaking people out.
Well, especially because they're spinning the narrative like we're going back to the 1800s or something, with women's rights Yeah.
And again, it's kind of a technicality. It's actually, because it's like the way it was a trigger law that Doug Ducey passed in Arizona, and the way that it was done, like the Supreme Court saying it's not valid. And anyway, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. And I guess I do have a solution. And I wrote a whole essay about this on my a website I write for called Everyman Commentary, which is that basically we need to equate abortion to slave owning, and we need to equate those participating or supporting abortion as worse than slave owners. We need to basically say that the pro-abortion movement is the pro-slavery movement, period, and the pro-life movement should be the pro-abolition movement. And we need to say it and say it and say it, and we need to shame the people that are defending the killing of unborn children, because the darkness that is so obviously coming down in our country, the mindset that we are sitting around saying, well, yes, kill them up to this point, kill them, the negotiating we are doing, like Abraham with Sodom, you know.
Yeah.
Well, how about this? How about this? How about
30
this?
men, 20 men.
It's gross.
Counterpoint from
Yes.
Ken.
Slight devil's advocate. I am moral consistency demands conception, right? That life begins at conception, because like you.
Well, I would say philosophical,
moral, philosophical,
biological.
right. Like just being consistent.
Yeah.
Like a fetus has everything that it has minus
That it
what are the
needs.
5 things, like, time.
Well, sled is like size,
sled. I can't remember
development, location. Yeah.
What is it?
Size, location,
Development is one of them.
development. I
and
never remember the E.
I can't remember the E.
I don't know. Might be education. I don't know.
But like, that's not to say it's the same when, a miscarriage happens at
Sure.
5 weeks and a miscarriage happens at
33
2 weeks before delivery.
Yeah.
Those miscarriages are different tragedies. And I think Evan, for his, 90%, what you said, makes your stomach upset, 90% of the abortions that we're talking about anyways happen before, I think it's like 20 weeks, right? But it's not a good thing or a bad thing, right? If X amount of abortions are happening, like, wouldn't we
Want them to be in the earlier
wouldn't we feel
stages.
worse if they were late stage abortions?
But
right?
that's not the argument.
It's not the argument.
Yeah.
Right. The argument
but
is
that's
against incrementalism.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but you mentioned the slavery example, which is a really good one, because you said you were black-pilled about this. I'm very white-pilled. If 10 years ago you would have said, like, Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned in your
Yeah.
lifetime, you would have said no, and you would have been right to laugh in my face if I had told you
And
that,
Texas,
right?
by the way, basically does have the Arizona law.
And you mentioned the slavery argument, which is like, if you told slaves in 1950, like, hey, the Emancipation Proclamation.
1950.
Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
1850. If you told slaves in 1850 that the Emancipation Proclamation is coming in like 10 years,
Yeah.
they would have laughed in your face, and they would have been right to do so.
Yeah.
Right? We just had Roe overturned.
Yeah.
I do think that the political environment, as crazy as it is right now, is not as certain as it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm optimistic about that. That gives me white pill.
Yeah.
Optimism is not a certainty that you will win. It's the lack of a certainty that you will lose.
Yeah.
Right?
Look at you just dropping little
That's my white pill.
truth bombs.
It's environment, by the way. Size, level of development.
Environment. Where is it? Is it inside or is it
Yes.
outside?
Right,
Yes.
right.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems to me like the pro-life movement, largely abolition movement, whatever, they have all the arguments. I mean, I think the arguments are airtight, and not to be a little bit, Ben Shapiro, but facts don't care about your feelings. Well, actually, they do. Actually, feelings like dominate the entire cultural landscape right now. Like, nobody cares about facts.
No one
at all.
No one will listen to your facts unless they know you care about their feelings.
So I think that, speaking of polycules, I think the kind of radical autonomy that we're living through right now it manifests itself in abortion. Because basically abortion is basically you being able to say, even to your own child, nothing gets in my way.
Oof. Ooh.
Nothing gets in my way of the way that I want to live. And that it's a mindset that ultimately makes actual politics, actual civic society actually impossible. Because we are basically going to be fighting to the death for our autonomous
Atomized
lives,
individuality. Yeah.
and civic society just can't work that way. So that's why it's like abortion is like a cancer, to a society. Even if what's also kind of crazy about this is, like, I know there are so many people right now who they're literally fighting for other people's children, and it is just a slap in the face over and over and over to like fight so hard to save the lives of children that their parents want to kill,
Yeah.
So
I don't want to straw man, because, and I think I brought this up one of the last times I was here, they don't think it's a child.
That's right.
And I think that matters, right? I think it matters to say, like, you want to kill children and you think they're children and you want to kill them, right? That's where the disagreement is it a human life worth protecting, right? Is it a human life with legal protections? Is it a personhood?
Well, yeah, but I mean,
that's what we're arguing about, and
Yeah.
they actually disagree. I think the argument needs to be convincing them rather than, like, telling them they believe it's a child when they actually don't. That's applying an argument that they don't actually make themselves.
And I
what
agree
that's
with you, Ken. But
Yeah.
here's what's interesting. I don't think it's just that some people don't agree. I think the people on the pro-choice side, if the baby is wanted, then it's a child. If it's not wanted, then it's not. And I'm saying that not for every one of them, but I'm noticing this in like pop culture and media. So I watch a lot of trash TV, as you guys well know. Evan's wife and I watch some of the same shows. And I'll notice like in the medical shows when they have the sweeping music, and they'll have the sweeping music on a part where a woman that wants an abortion and she doesn't live where it's legal, but she makes it to the other side of the state line and she can get one. The music swells and it's so beautiful and lovely and everyone's clapping to wipe away tears. And then I'm not joking when I say the next episode, like there'll be a fetal surgery that they pull off on this 20-week fetus, and it's never happened before, and it finishes and everyone is crying because they saved this baby's life,
and they're using the word baby.
Yes. For sure. Child, baby.
Yes.
My daughter, that kind of thing. Like the only difference between those two situations is was it wanted?
Yeah.
Was it no.
Actually, no. Sled doesn't matter. Yeah.
Right.
Whether or not
because
they wanted
in the
It's
second
perception.
situation, if it hadn't had the surgery, it would have died.
which would be really funny is like the third episode is them aborting that baby after it was saved.
Oh my gosh, talk about dark.
That would be so
But-
dark.
But that would actually point out the logical inconsistency.
Exactly. And nobody has the cojones to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think you're right that we have to convince people, but it's not just that we have to convince them that every single one is a would-be baby or an actual baby, but that but they don't get to be the deciders of that. It either is or isn't. And it doesn't matter which episode of Grey's Anatomy it is, right? It matters what's true. In that case.
this is the slavery art. This is why slavery
Yes.
is the corollary, because slavery was about saying human beings are subhuman or
And then the
unhuman.
other people saying they're not human, and you say yes they are. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, so like when we talk about racism, like that was real racism.
Yes.
Like where they literally said, by virtue of your being black, you are less human. You are like I don't know that it was an evolution thing or what, but they did not have, say, the same inherent rights that other people had. So that's it is in each case it is a stand upon the culture, because it is saying that humans aren't. Look, the sign that I use when I sit outside in front of the church is a probably about a 7-week developed fetus, a picture, and it says human being on it.
I don't like those because you've gotten fooled by the elephant one, right? We've all gotten fooled by the elephant one.
I don't even know
Well,
what
it's
you're
definitely
talking about.
human, but go ahead.
No. Where they hold up a picture of an elephant fetus at around like 7 weeks and say, "This isn't a human."
Oh.
And then a bunch of us
It's
go
a
in
gotcha.
and we take the bait and we say, "Of course it's a human."
Oh,
Sled.
okay.
The only difference between that and a
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
is, and they're like, "No, it's not a human. It's an elephant." Right? And it's
Aren't
like,
they the funny jokes?
I hate it. So like,
Well, an article that would be worth looking at. I didn't go through it. I just jumped off. But 60% of Catholics think abortion should be legal. That's from the Christian Post, and in that is a Pew Research poll. And it's pretty remarkable. And yes, like Catholics who actually go to church, the number's
my
lower.
gosh.
Only 34% of Catholics. But this is shocking. 34% of Catholics who go to Mass every week think abortion should be legal.
That's insane.
I mean, why are you even going to Mass? Like, why even bother? Like, the Catholic Church on paper thinks abortion is like the gravest moral
Anathema.
evil. It is a mortal sin. You commit abortion, like you go straight to hell. And I'm like 34%, 40% of Republicans think abortion should be legal in all or most cases. So, Ken, brother, I am hoping your optimism like wins out soon, because it seems to me like we are on the autonomy rail. It's going full speed ahead. No one wants to. There's just not much of an interest at this point in the kind of sacrifice necessary to save people. So I don't know. It's a little black pilled on that, but the white pill is that children are beautiful, wonderful gifts of God, and a lovely home with a marriage and a family will make you quite happy. So no polycule and children.
well, adopt, right?
Also,
Like,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, because not everyone can have their own children, and I'm, again,
Even
like
if you can have your own children, like choose not to adopt. It's wonderful. It is the clearest like
Also very
metaphor
biblical.
of Jesus.
Yep.
Like adopting the Gentile people
Yeah.
that like didn't belong to the way of God, except for they actually did. They're part of the family.
Amen.
Yep.
We're
good.
about at an hour. Did you want to do another? You want to do an honorable mention, or
We got
good?
another one.
Do I have another one? What do I
Yeah.
have? Taliban? Oh, the map thing. Maybe we'll save that.
Save that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ken, where can people find you?
Here, And at Theology by the Pine events, I'll be stacking chairs.
There you go. Yep.
That's true.
And
I'm everywhere.
Okay.
Instagram and Facebook but you should go to theologybythepine.org because that's where you can find out actually you can read stories about all of us, including Ken, since he's on the board. He's the only one that actually turned in like a story about like, who am I? And it's actually very good. You should go read it. But you can read that about me and Evan and all the other people on the leadership team, and also contact us. And you can send us hate mail. That happens sometimes too. I'm just saying, if you don't like what we're saying, you can tell us that too.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm Evan. I'm at First Lutheran, flhouston.org. So thanks for listening. Until next time, we encourage you to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.